first of all, women are 52% of the electorate, and 52%, 54% of the total population. So if you're determining representation or equal representation by demographics, by the number, then we ought to be 52% of almost everything. But that's not the case. At the national level, I guess nationwide, if you take all of the statistics, we range from anywhere between 18% to about 30%. And so most of our offices or women in office are at the local level. And a lot of that is not in policymaking positions. We have, if you look at some of the current statistics, 19% of the mayors in the largest 100 cities are women. So it means about 19 of the 100. We've got 3 Supreme Court justices, 7 cabinet folks. These are, 24%, 19%, 10%. So we are not yet there at 50%.
According to my research, part of the problem is there just aren't a ton of women running for the offices. Why would you say they aren't running?
Well, several years ago, there was a campaign that started that was when women run, women win. And you're exactly right. The reason, one of the reasons that that we are not more prominent in these elected positions is because there are lots of obstacles that are placed for both men and women to become elected officials, but especially for women. For a long time in our history, and even still today, women and men operate in 2 spheres, the private sphere and the public sphere. Women operate in the private sphere, and that's family and children. And even when they go into policy areas, they still tend to go into those areas. For a long time, public sphere, and that's politics. Politics falls in the public sphere. And that's mostly has been for men.
It was in 1977, and before you were even thought of, I know. I had been active in local politics a little bit, working for other people. And I became Jimmy Carter's 2nd District chairperson in 1976 and got to go to the inauguration and all that cool stuff and was a delegate to the convention and, was just getting more active. And I taught at Bowling Green High. And it was kind of my students that really pushed me. That so you've done all this stuff, campaigning for other people. Why don't you campaign for yourself? And the logical office was city government because, you don't have to go to Frankfurt all the time. And because we have the city manager form of government, I could keep my day job. The city commissioners and mayor are all part-time, and the city manager really does the day-to-day operational work of the city. So that was perfect. Well, there's 4 city commissioners, and that year there were 12 men and me.
Oh, wow.
And I know. And no woman had ever been elected anything in Warren County, period. I mean, think back, because before you were, that was 1977. So in many ways, it was an advantage because people could vote for 4. And so they could vote for 3 good old boys and then feel really good about themselves by voting for a woman. Being the only woman in that big field was definitely an advantage. And you ask, did I face any challenges or whatever? I did. I ran into some things. I campaigned a lot door to door. I'm the nice little lady school teacher knocking on people's doors. And more often than you would believe, of course you're doing it in the late afternoon, early evening, people would say, "What is your husband doing about dinner?" Like, "Poor Jay, he'll starve, you're out here." And, my answer was, he's 40 years old, he can take care of himself for his own dinner. And the first time that we had all the candidates together speaking to a group, I was really nervous. And the man that went in front of me was this real kind of older, just typical Southern gentleman. And at the end of his little spiel, he said, "Now I want you to vote for 4 good men." And I was next. So I told them I wanted them to vote for 3 good men and 1 really terrific woman. And they loved it, and that kind of broke the ice. But other than just little things like that, I did not feel like it was a handicap to be a woman. Again, with a large field like that, it was an advantage. And I stood out, even though I wasn't an incumbent. I had never run for anything else at all. But there was no way for me to just blend in with the crowd. And that was good. That was good.
That is really good.
And so I was elected to 5 2-year terms as city commission. So after 10 years, I'm at the point where, I don't want to be a career city commissioner. I can either run for mayor, take my chance, or be sitting in a rocking chair when I'm old and feeble and wonder what would have happened if I did. So the decision to run for mayor was really fairly easy because I wanted to stay involved in city government. So there we were. And then there was only one other candidate. So it was and that was different, campaigning against just one person rather than in a field where you can vote for 4. This time it had to be just me. And I won, so there I was.
Another obstacle is, even though we've progressed, we are still the primary caregivers for our families, for not only children, but for our husbands, and on top of that, many of us, because of economic reasons, now have to work, and so you're worried about caregiving, providing for your family, those kinds of things, and there often leaves very little time for any of those other things. And so women then have what we call situational barriers because of the situations we find ourselves in, single parenthood, having to work, having to take care. So that's situational. Women also have, there are some structural differences, that there are real obstacles to running for office. First of all, you need lots and lots of money.
Yeah.
Even at the local level, you need money. And women have not easily been able to raise money. There's some laws out there from the Federal Election Commission that says, a husband can contribute to, a wife can contribute to the husband's campaign, but not vice versa. And there's just different laws that impact the genders. Sometimes there's family funds and that sort of thing. So women, you can donate a certain amount to your own campaign, but then women don't sometimes have that kind of money.
So for the women who are running, you mentioned they have trouble fundraising. What other kind of obstacles do they face, like in their campaigning?
In their campaigning, funding is big, but women get a different type of scrutiny. It's one of the 3 obstacles we sort of say are the 3 H's: husband, hemline, and hair. That your husband has to be that you are not blamed. You are responsible for how everybody in your family acts, because you are the mother, because you're the wife. So if your husband acts up, or if your children act up, well, there must be something wrong with the family, and that means there's something wrong with the woman or the wife. If only she'd stay home and take care of the family. How can a woman then run for office if her husband is a philanderer? Or, those kinds of things. And so we scrutinize the husband. Geraldine Ferrara, who was one of the first to run for vice president on a major ticket, her husband came under great scrutiny, lost his business and that sort of thing. We see Bill Clinton, and Hillary Clinton having to answer to and pay for the sins of Bill. Well, we don't see that so much for a man. Okay, so we got the husband. And then the hemline is a woman has to look a certain way. And hemline is just the way you the way you dress, the way you carry yourself. A woman can't be too pretty because then she's not taken seriously. And she can't be too unfeminine because then, you know, there are all kinds of other questions. And so there's a fine line there. You know, so that hemline talks about not only clothes, but everything else. And then the final one is sort of the hairline. And again, that's appearance.
So how do you think Hillary is handling all of these obstacles in her campaign?
Well, she's been, as Donald Trump says, she's been in the business for over 30 years. And she knows how to maneuver. You know, and she when in interviews she says it still bothers her, it still hurts that she comes under greater scrutiny or a different kind of scrutiny. How many times have we again talked about her pantsuits, and what is she wearing, and why is that color, and what's that around her neck? Is it, you know, those kinds of things where you don't necessarily see that with the man candidate. And she's able to, she has learned through the years to deal with it with humor, to modify what she wears, to modify how she says some things. There was, I remember I think it was at the 2008 election where she was seen as too cold. And so she made a concentrated effort in New Hampshire when she was campaigning to be more warm, to hug more babies, to cry. You know, but you don't want to cry too much because, you know, she's that emotional female. And so she hears what people are saying. And so she changes her campaign style. She changes what she wears, just a little way to incorporate that and to modify.
Do you think Hillary will be able to pull out the win?
Yes, I do. I would like to see it be as big a margin as possible so that she can really say that she's got a mandate.
Well, I think the latest CNN poll I just received just a few minutes ago says that that while she's ahead, it's getting a little bit closer. There's some battleground states that are still out there, but I think Donald Trump has a harder road to toe than Hillary. So I guess if the election were held today, she'd win. I think the popular vote may be close, but I think the Electoral College, she'll get a lot more of those. So I think she can't be too smug. She can't stop campaigning, and there's no evidence that she's going to do that. But she's just got to keep the pedal to the metal